personal crisis. So we'll start with prayer. Father, hallowed be your name. God, wait for this country and the depth of our blindness and my own, and exactly what you would have us do in this time. I don't feel worthy to even present this material because I know so little about so much. And I'm confessing these things to these people in front of you so that we're on an even playing field. So that when I call your spirit into this meeting, I sincerely mean it. Because I don't think we can do anything without your intervention at this point. So, I'm just going to ask that you bless our thoughts and our understanding in such a way that we can see what you would have us to see, hear what you would have us to hear, and understand the things that we need to know in order to accomplish an end that has a happy ending. And if it be your will, may we be used as instruments to establish your kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And I ask these in Yeshua's name, amen. Amen. My personal crisis is about the time I think I know something and I want to share it, I learn more and realize how little I know. And I keep coming up to these places where I think I know something only to get on the other side and realize that there is so much more. So I don't represent to be teaching you the truth today. This is a snapshot of where I happen to be right now. And I'm going to share some things that I know that I think make sense to me, and maybe they'll make sense to you, about law and about where we're at. And we'll get into a little bit of the purpose, the scope, and the purview of law and its proper objective and purpose. You know, I've gone to church a lot, and I got real tired of hearing the same old thing over and over again about the fundamentals of Christianity. And I wish that I could feel the same way about going to meetings or schools where I got tired of hearing the fundamentals about law, because we certainly don't hear those things. So you're going to hear them from me. We're going to go back to square one and see if we can take a look and see where it is we are relative to where it is we're supposed to be. And after we lay a foundation, I want to distinguish some substantive and procedural law and distinguish the difference between the two. You know, you can know everything there is to know about law, but if you don't know the procedure as to how to apply it, it really doesn't help you. So you can be a theoretician on law, but not have the tools of application, and it makes you a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. So I hope to bring the procedure and the substance together so that it can be effective. And introduce the means by which law is imposed in the world. I'm going to use Frederick Bastiat today. I've done other presentations where I've just used the founding fathers. I'm going to present this one a little differently. Frederick Bastiat was a French economist. And I'll get into his history a little bit later. And then we're going to go and discuss the hierarchy of law, distinguish bills, statutes, rules, regulation, ordinances, and resolutions, executive orders. What are all these things? You know, they hit us at 100 miles an hour. We hear about them in the news. what force and effect do these things have, and how are they applied? And what about venue and jurisdiction? And can the government do anything it wants and get away with it? And the answer is absolutely not. But if we don't know these things, then we really don't know how to corral the power of government. And so Frederick Bastiat was a French economist, statesman, and author. He wrote a book in the last couple of years of his life called The Law. And he wrote this book. He was dying of tuberculosis. And what he wrote about in this book was, what is the law, what is it for? And what he was doing was he's taking on the concept of socialism. He was taking on the concept of the state can do anything it wants, and the law can be used for any purpose that the state feels is necessary. And that's what this little book is about. And so I'm going to use this book today as an introduction. And like I said, most of his writing was done before the French Revolution in February 1848, and that was the period that France was turning to complete socialism. So there's a parallel in history. So we can learn from history. We can learn from a perspective of a man that was written about the same time that we're living in today. He was the deputy to the Legislative Assembly. He studied and explained how each socialist fallacy eventually and necessarily degenerates into communism. Well, I'm going to show you how American law has been commandeered by unscrupulous individuals who prefer the idea of a free lunch to freedom. Now, Frederick starts off with a premise, and it's the same premise that the Founding Fathers started off with. It's the same premise that you find in the Colorado Constitution. Preamble says, "We the people of Colorado, with profound reverence to the supreme ruler of the universe." Frederick Bastiat, life is a gift from the Creator, physical, intellectual, and moral. Creator has entrusted us with the responsibility of preserving it, developing, and protecting it. Life precedes human legislation. The Declaration of Independence says that the Founding Fathers held the truth to be self-evident, that we are all created equal, that we are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So we can come in from several different angles, but it appears that we're going to proceed from the premise that there is a Creator who I believe is our Father. I believe we're spiritual beings inhabiting a piece of meat on this planet, and we have forgotten who we are. And I think that's the beginning of our problems, is we don't know who we are, and we've lost our way relative to our true Father in heaven. Life, liberty, and property do not exist because of human legislation. It is the fact that life, liberty, and property exist in the first place that caused human legislation to exist. Declaration of Independence, I just quoted. To secure these rights, I just quoted. Colorado Anti-Discrimination Commission v. Case. Now, I'm going to stop here and just, to make life interesting, I'm going to explain what that 380 P2D 34 means. What that says is in volume number 380 of the Pacific Reporter, second series, on page 34, page 34 is where that, in that volume, that page, that's where that case begins. And on page 39 through 40, that's where you find this quote. All right, one more time. That's the Pacific Reporter, second series, page 34, volume 380, page 34, page 39 through 40, that quote exists. Now the next quote, 151 Colorado, that's a reporter, a digest specific to Colorado. So that's a legal site that all paralegals, lawyers, courts recognize, and when you use that site, you're telling them where you got your quote from. So it's not an arbitrary quote, just pulled out of thin air. And when I put the quotes around it, that's exactly what the Colorado Supreme Court said here in Colorado. So I'm using the authority of the Supreme Court to say the individual and not the state is the source and basis of our social compact. Sovereignty now resides in, and has always resided in, the individual. And in America, That's the fundamental premise that the government is established on. We have to start at the root, and there is a root. The individual is a root. So what is law? Premise. Each of us has a natural right to defend his or her life, liberty, and property. Law is the collective organization of the individual right to lawful defense of their property, liberty, life, liberty, and property. In other words, if I have an individual right to protect myself, then when I come into a group, and each one of you come into a group with that same right, there's a collective right that is created, and we all agree, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll create a government, but the government can do only that which I myself have the right to do. So lawful defense is a right, and so now the group collectively agrees, okay, well, we have a collective right to lawful self-defense as well. And that's the root of government. That's the very beginning of government. We agree we should hire a sheriff. And we give the sheriff the power that we each have individually. Collectively, we give to the sheriff and say, Sheriff, we're going to hire you. We're going to elect you to do what we lawfully have the right to do, but we're going to delegate that to you. Premise. If everyone has a right to defend his or herself, even by force if necessary, it follows that a group has the right to organize and support a common force to protect these rights constantly. Thus, the principle of a collective right, the principle of government. Bottom line. Another premise. The principle of collective right is based on individual right. Now I'm being redundant. The common force that protects the collective right cannot logically have any other purpose or mission than that for which it acts as a substitute. In other words, if I don't have the right to do it individually, then the government doesn't have the right to do it representing me within a collective. Yes, sir?
Do you mind if we break in on your lecture?
You go right ahead.
Just for a clarification
Sure.
purpose, I like what you said there, that we have given that sheriff dedicated, okay. I guess what I'm getting at, is there a group in the country that considers that when you give the sheriff this authority, that you quit having that authority yourself?
No.
That you have given it, so you no longer have it.
Right, I see what you're asking. The sheriff, okay, let's work through this logically and using reason. We have just elected a sheriff to represent us, basically, and by delegating that power to him, we have authorized him to represent us as a group. But no, we're not abdicating our personal right. Absolutely not. We still have the personal right. So, no, we're not hiring him to be a babysitter and then we abdicate. The sovereignty, we're not vesting sovereignty in him. Remember, sovereignty remains vested in the individual and in the group. When the group comes together, the group exercises a collective sovereignty, but the sovereignty is relative sovereignty. It's not absolute sovereignty. It's relative to what we have rights to do. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I have the right to protect that. We're hiring the sheriff. We're the sovereign collectively hiring an agent. The agent's representing the sovereign. He's merely an agent. He's not the sovereign. We haven't given him sovereignty. So we retain that to ourselves. Now here's the Colorado Constitution exactly states this principle. All political power is vested in and derived from the people. Again, with the sheriff. The people have the power vested in them. Government right originates from the people, is founded upon their will only, and is instituted solely for the good of the whole.